Good evening and a warm welcome. Striking and unsettling developments are unfolding in Bangladesh. The eruption of anti-India sentiment on the streets of Dhaka and beyond, where protests, crowds have not only taken to the streets to vent anger, but have chanted anti-India slogans outside Indian diplomatic missions amid a nation spiraling into unrest. Videos and eyewitnesses reports show demonstrators rallying near the Indian Assistant High Commission in Chattogram and in Dhaka, vocally accusing New Delhi of meddling and demanding accountability, even as they march on Indian diplomatic missions premises. This dramatic surge in anti-India rhetoric comes against the backdrop of one of Bangladesh's most turbulent periods in years. The unrest was ignited by the shooting and subsequent death of Sharif Usman Hadi, a polarizing youth leader whose vocal criticism of India and role in last year's student-led uprising made him a potent figure in Bangladesh's fractious political landscape. The protests, which have seen major media offices torched, clashes with security forces and calls for justice and revolution, have now crossed into diplomatic terrain. India has summoned Bangladesh's High Commissioner in New Delhi, citing security concerns for its missions in Dhaka, and suspended visa services at key centers in Bangladesh due to rising threats. Dhaka, however, has firmly rejected India's official explanations regarding incidents around its High Commission in New Delhi, calling the Indian account inadequate and stressing that diplomatic security should be paramount. Bangladesh's Foreign Affairs advisor has also accused New Delhi of underplaying the seriousness of reported threats, and they have also made clear that Dhaka expects appropriate measures from India while refusing to publicly detail protest démarche formats. Amid these tensions, the broader situation has taken on additional complexity. A Hindu man was brutally murdered in Maimen Singh during the unrest, sparking further outrage and narratives of minority vulnerability, even as Bangladeshi authorities say suspects have been detained and reject linking this killing to systemic insecurity, which is an outcome widely reported. So tonight we unpack what this unrest tells us about Bangladesh's fragile political transition, the rise of anti-foreign, particularly anti-India narratives on the streets, and how these events are reshaping one of South Asia's most important bilateral relationships at a moment of deep domestic upheaval. I'm Griya Atul, and let's get on with the explosive weekend debate. Taking this across to my guests who are joining us this evening, Deepak Vora, former diplomat, is with us. Also with us is Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation. Brahma Chalani, Strategic Affairs expert, joins us. And also joining us is Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, who's a Bangladeshi journalist. Salahuddin, I'd begin with you. You would be the best person to explain to us what you see happening in Bangladesh and the reasons so far that seem to have been cited by the protesting crowds. What are they exactly blaming India over?
Thank you very much, Griya. Actually, what is happening in Bangladesh now is a state-patronized, or let's say regime-patronized jihadist extremism. And you have shown the video that where we can see that ISIS flags are seen all around the city, and they are chanting slogans against Hindus and religious minorities, even against journalists. We will be shocked to know that only on the December 18th, when two newspaper offices in Dhaka came under attack, Pratamalo and Daily Star just yesterday, immediately after the funeral of Hadi. His followers declared that each and every journalist of those newspapers should be hunted and chased and killed. And they even called for setting all the houses of the journalists of those two newspapers and into fire. So you can understand this is something that possibly we don't see even in Iran, even in Pakistan, Pakistan, which is a terrorist nation. We don't see. This is what is happening here. And Yunus is sitting at the top of all such activities because he is mobilizing the jihadists, he is mobilizing the terrorists to anyhow find an excuse to either to postpone or cancel the February 12th election, what he has promised, though Mr. Professor Chalani will tell you and ask then other esteemed co-panelists that Yunus has no intention of handing over power through the election because he is also holding a referendum which will give him the capacity and authority of emerging into the supreme leader of Bangladesh and turning the country into a caliphate.
Okay, Brahmachalana, do you agree with these views that are emerging from Bangladesh? And very, very strongly, this is from the journalist fraternity that is also facing all of these incidents of arson that have been strangely directed at the journalists. So that fourth pillar of democracy does not exist anymore in Bangladesh, which is fast becoming a rogue nation. Do you think because of the elections approaching, this is why we are seeing such a volatile play that is emerging out of Bangladesh, or it is strongly because of India giving that safe haven to Sheikh Hasina?
It has nothing to do with the election as such, because if you look at the last 16 months since the violent military-backed overthrow of Prime Minister Hasina's government, what we have seen is a pattern where Bangladesh has descended into chaos. The economy is reeling, radical Islamist forces are gaining ground, young people are becoming increasingly radicalized, lawlessness is taking hold, and religious and ethnic minorities are under siege. The country's future has never looked bleaker. I can't think of any time since Bangladesh gained independence in 1971 with India's assistance when this country's future has looked so bleak as it does today. And the reason is that Yunus has presided over Bangladesh's descent into Islamist chaos. He rules with the help of Islamists. He has a de facto alliance with the most radical Islamist forces. And it's not a coincidence that in recent days, we are seeing the resurgence of anti-India passions. It's the regime in Dhaka that is stoking the anti-India passions. Look at Hadi's killing. The regime was quick to identify the alleged killer of Hadi and to tell the public that this killer managed to escape to India by land. If they knew who the killer was, how come the killer managed to go from Dhaka all the way to the India border and escape into India? The Bangladesh border force is patrolling the border, and the claims are that they will not allow anyone to leave Bangladesh because the narrative in Bangladesh is that some of Awami League leaders have escaped by land to India, and therefore the authorities have tightened the border security considerably. So how come, if they knew who the killer was, that they allowed the killer to escape to India? Of course, this is just fiction. The fact that they were able to identify the killer almost immediately.
But it's only now, possibly today, that there is an official version that's coming in from the IGP in Bangladesh that they don't have any conclusive evidence that such a thing might have happened, that the prime suspect might have, through land routes, escaped into India, and that is how they are choosing to put it on record. But too little, too late, you think?
Well, there's a bigger thing that's happening. You know, the first, there's routine scapegoating of India. Whenever there's any issue in Bangladesh, the regime, directly or indirectly, scapegoats India. Now, this risks inflicting lasting damage to a bilateral relationship that is central to Bangladesh's own well being and stability. Without India being cooperative, Bangladesh can have no security, not even food security. India is so vital to Bangladesh's well being.
But the larger question, Mr. Chalani, is Bangladesh really giving that kind of emphasis to that all-important bilateral equation that it has with India, or it used to have with India? And that is what the larger part of this debate really is. But before we go into that and deeper into that, I'd like to bring in Major General Katoch on this, about this instance of the claims and the narrative that has emerged from Bangladesh. What Mr. Chalani was also mentioning, that this killer who's responsible for shooting Hadi escaped into India through land route from Bangladesh. This also builds into a larger narrative that concerns India politically as well. We are looking at elections in a border state like West Bengal. There has always been this volatility, and I do not want the debate to digress, but do you think this infiltration aspect is also going to be very, very sternly looked at from this side of the border, now that these claims have been raised?
Thank you, Griya. Yes, as far as whatever is happening in Bangladesh is going to resound very, very deeply in West Bengal. There is absolutely no doubts about it. And the political vitriolic is going to expand day by day. But getting back to what is happening in Bangladesh, in my view, it is an Islamic takeover. And I would just like to expand this in two sentences. In 1971, when the liberation war was fought, it was fought on two planks. It was fought on the military front and on the civilizational front. On the civilizational front, there were Islamist forces fighting in Bangladesh who wanted to remain as part of Pakistan, as part of what has been called earlier as a caliphate. Of course, they weren't using the word caliphate at that time, but these Islamist forces were very strong. The military was defeated, and it remains defeated till now because the Pakistan army hasn't come back. But the civilizational forces were never defeated. The Islamists were not defeated in 1971. They remained there. And it took more than 2 decades to hang some of those people who had carried out the most brutal atrocities against their own people. Later on, even when Sheikh Hasina came to power, she was not very, I will say, she thought that she could get these Islamist forces on the democratic side. She gave them soft. She tried to sort of soft pedal them. But the other party, the BNP, was totally in bed with the Islamists. And the whole aim of getting the Islamists in was to get the Awami League out. Then, of course, in the last stages, you have the Americans coming in, using Muhammad Yunus and the Islamists to effect a regime change. This is a civilizational victory of the Islamists over the Bengali nation.
Okay.
And I made it very clear in some of my earlier statements. If the Bengalis do not fight back, the Bangladeshis, if the Bangladeshis do not fight back and reclaim their heritage, they will lose their language, they will lose their culture, and they will lose their civilizational ethos. It is their battle to fight. And I'm afraid, as of now, the Islamist forces are winning it, especially the scenes which came out when, when the mob, they killed a very poor Hindu, a laborer. The poorest of Bangladesh is poor. The way they stripped him, the way they burnt him, and the way they chanted. They have lost all sense of civilization. They have become
while you talk about this Islamist takeover, you're talking about how Bangladesh becoming this rogue nation. You mentioned about BNP. Do you think, and I want to take that question to Mr. Deepak Vora. We seem to have lost that link with Mr. Vora, but Brahma Chalani, would you like to take that?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. I want your inputs on this while we are wanting your video back. If you can hear me, I would want your 2 bits on this very aspect, BNP, and how BNP is still running that rogue narrative. In this case, there is the BNP leader, Abdul Haq, who has gone on to make some rather bizarre and very, very stark claims of disjointing, dislocating the 7 sisters from India and making them independent nations. All of this narrative is coming in from India, and the reason that they are trying to give as backing these narratives up is because India's involvement into our domestic affairs is something that we are standing up to. How do you see these developments, sir?
Well, thank you very much, ma'am. Always a privilege to be with you. I heard your introduction was outstanding. You have so many brilliant people. You have Mr. Chalani, you have General Katoch, you don't need me. Nevertheless, I've just come in from Guwahati, where we've inaugurated absolutely outstanding terminal at the airport, which is nothing like you could have seen anywhere. Now, what is happening, ma'am? Three things very quickly. This young fellow who was shot in Dhaka was already dead by the time they flew him to Singapore. Why didn't they bring him to Kolkata if they really wanted to save him? Who wants him dead? Someone who wants chaos so that elections are not held. Because this 90-year-old joker who was parachuted into Dhaka as chief advisor, he's going to get kicked out if elections are held. Doesn't matter which party wins. He has no hope for the future. Third, we call this the tyranny of the weak. I've been 52 years in diplomacy and counting. When you have domestic issues, point a finger at the other. You know, we've talked about the anti-India tirade, etc. Ma'am, you might have heard of a country called Maldives. You may have heard of Sri Lanka. You may have heard of Nepal, of Seychelles. All of them, at one point or the other, became very arrogant and abusive towards India. And then all of them came back quietly. I've been in diplomacy long enough. Quietly and said, Tiger, wo to hum aise hi keh rahe the for public consumption. We had to calm them down, but we can't do without you. The same thing will happen with Bangladesh. Take it from me. I've been there several times, man. They may do what they want, but as was rightly pointed out, without energy support from India, without food support from India, they are going to face a very difficult situation. Chinese wouldn't get involved. They don't care. And the Americans have no further use for this character. They've achieved what they wanted, so now they'll jettison him also. My own feeling, ma'am, and I'll say it in a sentence, you know, I don't understand this business of civilizational and military and all this. All that I understand is Bangladesh is heading to civil war.
Okay.
And no one's going to be able to stop it. No one will intervene. This churning will come, and out of that, out of this chaos, some kind of order will
Okay.
emerge.
So, Mr. Vora, you made the exact same point that Mr. Chalani was also making, and which is why I want both your inputs on this next question. And we began the broadcast with showing images from the Indian missions in Bangladesh, in Dhaka particularly, and also Chittagong, where there was a very, very stark anti-India rhetoric that was emerging out of. No security presence, nothing was done to stop it. As opposed to that, we had a very small protest demanding justice for the killing of Deepu in Bangladesh, that lynching that happened of that Hindu young lad in Bangladesh, and there was a demand for justice that about 10 to 12 people in New Delhi wanted, and that's what that little minor protest was all about. And New Delhi said that was not a security concern or a security lapse. But Bangladesh is deciding to brazen it out. Bangladesh is calling it that there were certain death threats that were hurled against the envoy there in Bangladesh. India doesn't have ample amount of justification that it is giving, and we do not buy India's narrative. So are they thinking it through, is my question to both Brahmachalani and Deepak Vora. This entire crucial diplomatic tie with India, the importance of it and what it means for Bangladesh particularly, are they really thinking it through, or they are not prioritizing it right now? Mr. Chalani first.
Mr. Chalani, would you like to respond, or do you want me to respond?
Well, I'm happy to let you respond first, so I'll follow you, Ambassador Vora.
Okay, Ambassador Vora, please go
All
ahead.
right, thank you very much. Ma'am, let me put it to you. The brand equity, the equity that we have in Bangladesh is far too strong. This is a temporary aberration. For anyone to say, ho jayega, wo jayega, nothing is going to happen, they'll come to their senses sooner rather than later. Let me put it to you like this. Tiny nation, we are the big fellow. Naturally, when you have a problem, internal problem, you point and say, this is this guy's fault. And the fact that a handful of chaps came out, started the High Commission, then these little fellows become very aggressive. Look what's happening to our High Commissioner, etc. Take it easy, Tiger. How many Muslims have been in the last, ever since you've been doing these atrocities against Hindus? How much retaliation has taken place in India? How many Muslims have you slaughtered because you have killed Hindus over there? None at all. So this is the kind of thing that they tend to forget. This is the age of the social media. And these fellows better, ma'am, I don't know whether they learn this or not, but what they are, the kind of stuff they are spreading now, it'll come back to haunt them. And this 90-year-old idiot, let me put it to you, ma'am, in India's position, and let me very quickly,
Sure. I think we've lost that link with Ambassador Vora. Mr. Chelani, would you like to add to it, please, sir?
Andrea, diplomacy is about leverage. India has considerable leverage against Bangladesh, but we are reluctant to employ that leverage against Bangladesh. I don't know why. We, for example, ever since Prime Minister Modi met with Mohammed Yunus on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit in Thailand in April, India has remained largely silent. It has not expressed concern over the continuing persecution of minorities. India, for example, has not raised its voice over the fact that Chinmoy Krishna Das, who was leading peaceful protests against atrocities on Hindus, he was jailed in November 2024. At that time, India did issue a protest, a public protest. But since then, India has remained silent. And by keeping Chinmoy Krishna Das in jail, the Yunus regime has effectively crushed protests by minorities. So I think India needs to raise its voice, because what's happening in Bangladesh directly impinges on India's security. And look at what's happening in Bangladesh. The developments are very ominous to India's long-term security. Bangladesh and Pakistan have quietly stepped up defense and intelligence cooperation.
Yes.
The ISI is now in joint collaboration with Bangladesh's DGFI. There's an ISI cell operating in Dhaka. There is an emerging Bangladesh-Pakistan security
absolutely.
nexus
And Major General Katoch, how can we forget that entire gifting of a very stylized map of Bangladesh that ended up including Indian portions into its territory to Pakistani envoys that were visiting Bangladesh, and this was done by Mohammed Yunus on not one but two occasions. And then we see ISIS flags, which are very much part of the protest in Bangladesh. All of this example is good enough to, in fact, tie this entire sequence of events on how Bangladesh is cozying up to Pakistan.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt that they're cozying up to Pakistan, and those relations have started after many decades. So that is certainly a victory as far as Pakistan is concerned. They will see it that way, because now they've got another front to open against India. Bangladesh, of course, is not a military threat at all, but you see, being a border state and bordering our northeastern region, it has a tremendous potential to create disturbances within India. Of course, in my earlier programs, I've also said that Bangladesh must not forget, especially Mr. Yunus must not forget, that Operation Sindoor is still on. And their people can be targeted as well as anybody else, and their terrorist camps can be targeted from anywhere in India. If we know where they are, we'll hit them. So this is a narrative which is being spread, but I'll get back to my original point, which our friend from Bangladesh also said. It is an Islamist takeover. And you see, despite the optimism that we have got the leverages and all that, when it comes to the Islamist takeover, I don't think we have any leverage there. Unless the people of Bangladesh, both the Awami League and the BNP, have to join together against this fight, or both will be eliminated. That is the danger. And they are the majority. They are 70 to 80% of the population. But that 20% will win. And they will win by force. And they will use Islam as a weapon to browbeat their own citizens.
Right.
And that is the danger which is staring us in the face.
Right.
How we handle it is the challenge ahead.
Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, I began the debate with you. I'm ending it with you. And I asked that Sheikh Hasina question to Mr. Chelani. So it is safe to assume that Sheikh Hasina still dominates the discourse when it is about India and Bangladesh. Whether it is Bangladesh sending that note verbal to India, demanding the extradition of Sheikh Hasina, or in fact wanting India to extradite Sheikh Hasina, all of this really trying in a sense to pressure India and not really achieving much success. All of this is rattling Bangladesh. Is that safe to say?
I think,
Yes.
in my personal opinion, Yunus is no one. Yunus is doing what his ISI masters are dictating. And ISI masters want Bangladesh become a newer playground of the proxy war. And Pakistan wants to use Bangladesh in exporting terrorism to India. And Yunus is just implementing the desire of the Pakistani ISI and also US deep state. as far as the Sheikh Hasina's issue is concerned, you see, in Bangladesh, everyone, our distinguished co-panelists are aware that Bangladesh politics is basically bipolar, BNP and Awami League. And others, if you're naming Jamaat Islami or other Islamic forces, their vote bank is just 7%.
Yes.
And Yunus has no popular vote bank at all.
Okay.
So either Awami League or BNP. Unfortunately, BNP's key principle, BNP's
Right.
founding principle is anti-India principle. So BNP basically
And
is
that's
a
why you
anti-India.
see people like, in fact, Mr. Haq making that entire rant against India, and it's being allowed in Bangladesh, and that is what is rather worrying that is emerging out of Bangladesh. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining us tonight. And